At long last, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie, has finally arrived, and this movie is centered around the introduction of Knuckles as the primary antagonist. But how strong is Knuckles? If you remember, I did a pretty good little video a couple years ago, a fun one, called How Strong is Super Sonic? Well, I am not a Sonic expert, although I am a fan since I was a little kid. But on this video, we're going to go through all of the sources to get you all of the accurate information about how strong Knuckles is, and I will be bringing on an expert to talk all about it with me. I hope you enjoy it, because it's going to be a good one. The one enemy that we cannot overcome is Father Time. Every human being on this planet ages, and if you're a man, you risk losing your hair even in your 30s. If you're worried about losing your hair young, Keeps will put you with a doctor who can get the right treatment for you. But you will want to act fast because the sooner the better before it gets worse. And right now, Keeps is offering 50% off to all of you at keeps.com/geekdom. 50%, that's half off your first order. Keeps.com/geekdom. Alright, so joining me today to discuss the power of Knuckles, please welcome back to the channel, it's been a little while, the resident Sonic expert of the West, one of them anyways, but I respect this man. Please welcome Johnny back to Geekdom 101. What's up, man?
Hey, man, good to be back.
Yeah, I'm happy you're back because you and I did a video called How Strong is Super Sonic. It was like a couple of years ago, and I had a lot of fun because the Sonic lore, you know, you have your video games, you have your comics, now we have the movies. There's going to be differences, and we're going to talk today about Knuckles, and I want to start first of all with the video games, specifically the older ones. You know, Knuckles was first introduced in Sonic 3, and you could play as him in Sonic and Knuckles, and in Sonic and Knuckles, if you gather together the Chaos Emeralds, you can get Super Knuckles, or you can get Hyper Knuckles if you get all the Super Emeralds too. So, tell us about how strong Knuckles was back in his early time.
Well, if you played Sonic 3 as Sonic, you'll immediately know that the moment Sonic gets on the island, he goes Super Sonic. Knuckles enters the scene by basically punching the Super out of Super Sonic.
Right, that's the very first scene of the game.
Very first scene, right there. Well, it tells you a lot what you need to know.
Right. So, in theory, you're saying that base Knuckles might be stronger than Super Sonic, or at least relative to him?
At least relative.
Okay. So, what about Super and Hyper Knuckles?
A lot of the abilities that Sonic would gain with Super forms carry over to Super Knuckles.
So, did they ever reveal like a multiplier for the Super forms in the Sonic lore, or is that just we guess it?
It's basically a guess. There's never been a real emphasis on multipliers on it or anything.
Right, okay. So now, moving on past that then, because that is a very impressive feat, because in theory that would mean that Hyper Knuckles is stronger than Hyper Sonic. What about the Archie comics? Is there any crazy feats that Knuckles does in those?
We mentioned this in the Super Sonic video, but when Super Sonic and Super Knuckles, they're called Hyper Knuckles for some reason, when they fight, they end up destroying a special zone, which is basically another dimension.
Wow.
This is like early Archie. This was before modern Sonic came into the scene.
So even back then they were pushing these guys.
Yep.
So what about the current series of comics now? Like, how is Knuckles' powers now compared to the Archie comics or compared to even the video games, like the older ones?
With the new IDW series, basically it's much closer to the continuity of the games. It basically takes place after the most recent Sonic game, which was Sonic Forces from 2017. So whatever Knuckles has done in the games carries over to this one. In the video games, after Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where, by the way, his final boss is Super Mecha Sonic, using the Master Emerald to turn himself super. So even in the finale,
right,
you have Knuckles fighting his super form. But past Sonic 3, you have the various fights with Chaos in Sonic Adventure, although two of them are team effort, but, you know, fighting what Eggman basically calls a god of destruction, and then in Sonic Adventure 2 we see him fight and harm a ghost.
Right, yeah.
The Sonic heroes Super Sonic and Knuckles and Tails use the power of the Chaos Emeralds to fight a souped up version of Metal Sonic called Metal Overlord.
Is Metal Overlord more powerful than Super Metal Sonic or Super Mecha Sonic?
Hard to say, but like he has the data of most of the characters that you fight with alongside the data from Chaos from Sonic Adventure. So he can copy those abilities and use them against everyone, including Shadow's Chaos Control.
So Knuckles can use Chaos Control. Now, does he do that in the modern comics? I'm not really up to speed on the modern Knuckles. Like, how powerful is Knuckles in the current stuff?
In the comics themselves, Knuckles hasn't done a whole bunch, but he's fought a Super Neo Metal Sonic alongside Sonic and Shadow, though they were kind of curb stomped. They were holding their own, but, Metal Sonic was just too strong for them in a super form. And then we have the fight with Master Overlord, which is basically Metal Overlord with the Master Emerald, but in that case it was a team effort between Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, and basically their whole group of friends, including Blaze the Cat and Silver the Hedgehog.
Yeah, and that was the one where everybody teamed up, right? Yeah, because that right there would be great. And I don't think they're going to do this, but if they eventually get to a point when they make these movies, these modern movies, and they get to that point where you have all those characters and they all have to work together, that would be freaking awesome, man. I don't know if we're ever going to get there with the new movies, but that would be something to see,
Basically an Avengers Assemble for Sonic.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like the big epic finale. I mean, I don't know if it has to be necessarily the last movie, but man, that would absolutely phenomenal if they did something like that.
Well, that whole thing with the big team up wasn't the first arc of the comics.
Right, so he gets even more powerful as the series goes on. Tell me about that.
There was this whole zombie kind of outbreak. They basically became, robotization from the older cartoons. It was basically that, but zombies.
What did Knuckles do in that?
He fought head to head with the zombified Shadow.
Okay.
And Shadow is pretty nuts.
Zombified Shadow has like a power boost, right? So how does that compare to Knuckles?
Shadow is like one of the stronger characters because of his crazy chaos powers. Because he has chaos control, has chaos blast, chaos spear, and all that. He's basically the one most in tune with chaos energy. So he's packing a wall up, especially if he removes the rings that he has in his wrists. Oh boy.
Yeah, the ring suppresses power is what you're saying.
Yeah. And this is true. You see it in the 2006 Sonic and Sonic X, which is closely supervised by Sonic Team. That kind of thing.
Did they power him up in the recent games? I mean, I know you said they did, but I mean, was there a purpose behind them doing that?
Knuckles hasn't seen a whole lot of action since I want to say Shadow's game, since he was fighting a whole lot of aliens alongside like Sonic, his friends, the government. He isn't very much an active character, and even in the 2006 Sonic, he's a playable character, but like all the focus there is put on like his Sonic, Shadow, and the newcomer Silver. So
right.
Since Sonic Heroes...
Yeah, Silver was basically Trunks.
Yeah, they even mentioned it in a design document. So
Right, I did that in my video, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but like Knuckles, at least since Sonic Heroes hasn't had a super major role, there aren't that many feats that you can take from after that game. Even without that, you see his power as soon as he comes into the scene. He fights two super forms, basically.
By himself.
Himself.
It's ridiculous. So, where do you think they go with Knuckles in the future? Like, do you have any thoughts on, before we get out of here, do you have any thoughts on Did they ever explain, like, if he has potential and things like that? Did they ever go into that with that character?
Knuckles, being the guardian of the Master Emerald, is expected to be super strong. In fact, there was a now defunct official website that says that Knuckles is basically as strong as Sonic is fast. And considering Sonic basically outran an explosion of energy for a few seconds, that's a lot.
Right. No, for sure. He's a damn monster. It almost seems like they change his power depending on, like, what they need from him. That's the way I kind of perceive it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but even then, Knuckles is super strong. I was actually remembering, and in Sonic Mania, he fights the Heavy King one-on-one, and Heavy King is basically doing the same thing Mecha Sonic did. He's using the Master Emerald to supercharge himself, and Knuckles manages to defeat him one-on-one. A similar thing happened in the Sonic Mini Adventures miniseries, which you can watch on YouTube for free, in which Metal Sonic was gonna use the power of the Master Emerald to power himself up, and Knuckles just comes in and punches him out of that.
Yeah, that seems to be a common thing. His fists seem to be able to overcome even, like, somebody who's stronger than him, and that, to me, means that he's a damn scary dude.
He's just a badass. I love him.
I've always loved him, too, since the very beginning. And he's almost like the Piccolo character. I do feel like he was a bit overshadowed, no pun intended, by Shadow. But, because Shadow kind of became the Vegeta of the series, the way I always perceived it.
Basically, the same thing happened to Piccolo.
Exactly. It's the same thing, man. It's so weird how much they parallel. But thanks again for being here, and we'll talk to y'all in the future.